Misty Coates. I am chairman of the 50th anniversary committee that Sweet Adelines will be celebrating in 1995 in New Orleans. I have with me today two of our past international presidents, and we'd like to find out a little bit about what you remember from the early days of Sweet Adelines. We have Pearl Borg. Pearl was president from 1952 to 1954. Is that right, Pearl?
That's correct.
Also an international queen of harmony with the Tune Twisters. My notes say they won in 1949. Do I have that
Your
right?
notes are correct.
All right. And Dottie Bleeker, who followed Pearl as president in 1954 to 1955. I don't have you down as a quartet member, Dottie, but I'll bet there's one back in your past, isn't there?
Yes, the Minorettes. They placed third in 1950.
And how often do the two of you see each other today?
Not today, but years ago we worked together a lot.
You worked a lot together. You were on the international board together, weren't you?
Yes.
For several years.
I haven't seen Dottie for at least 6 years.
Probably.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
Well, it's
Good to see her again.
Good thing we have conventions, isn't
Yes,
it? So that we have an
exactly.
opportunity to get together. Okay, what I'd like to know from you, first of all, is, Dottie, how did you learn about barbershop music?
My father, he was in the Madison chapter of the society, and he got a letter from somebody, and he brought it home to me and said, Dottie, this is something for you. So he and I started the Madison chapter, and we wrote to Tulsa and got information, and so started.
And it had just started. It hadn't been going very long at that time.
This was 1948.
Okay.
I think Pearl was a little ahead of me there.
And Pearl, when did you first hear about it?
In 1947,
Right at the beginning.
I was palling around with the Johnson sisters, and we were all in Chicago, and they were known then as the only women's barbershop quartet in America. And they heard about the contest coming up in Tulsa in October, and everybody encouraged them to go. So they decided to drive out, and I decided I would just go out just to hear the Johnson sisters sing. Unfortunately, they did not win that contest, and at that time they were starting the organization. Jane Pfeiffer was instrumental in getting the group together nationally. The Tulsa chapter had been going about 2 years before then, and they were trying to get a national board together, and the Johnson sisters said, well, none of us would be interested, and Pearl's the only other one from Chicago. So I came back as a member of the first national board.
All right. You were living in the right place at that time. Did you have any idea what was in store for you?
No, I had no thought at all, because we were just, by comparison, we were just a lot of country bumpkins then, really, because we were just feeling our way. And the songs were very different, as you might remember. They're very simple, 4-part barbershop songs with no fancy tags or anything like that. It was just singing straight barbershop and simple old songs, you know, Shine on Harvest Moon and Down by the Riverside and a lot of old things like that you don't hear anymore.
Dottie, did your father sing this same music when you
Yes,
were-
he did when he was a young man, he did. And he sang barbershop and woodshed it, you know, like they used to do in the good old days. And he just decided that he'd heard the Johnson sisters too. He'd been to Chicago and he'd heard the girls sing there somewhere. And he said, this is what we need to do here. So we did.
How long did it take you to get that chapter started? Was there a lot of interest?
Oh, we went to one of the men's shows, and there were several girls there, and we started talking about it, and we had 12 girls that decided they'd like to do this, and we did.
Wow, that was fast. And your father directed for a while,
Yes.
did he?
He directed he was the first chorus champion director that ever was in
Is
Sweet
that
Adelines.
right? Well, you mentioned
Anytime.
you mentioned the music. Where did you get your arrangements, or did you just make them up as you sang?
We made them up, and
Well, your dad did some arrangement.
he did some arranging.
We
He'd
just-
play the organ, and we'd follow his fingers.
We just had to depend on the arrangements that the men had. There were no special arrangements for women. And of course, as we all know now, the voicing is so different for women than it is for men. But we just would take the men's arrangements and then just transpose it and sing it in a key that was comfortable for us.
So a quartet like the Johnson sisters, who had been singing together, maybe had made those adjustments automatically.
Well, they had a man, a friend of their mother's, and he did the same thing. He said, now, Ruby, you're this finger, and Irene, you're this finger, and Stella, you're this finger, and Harriet, you're this one. And he'd play the piano, and they would sing, because I don't think any of them read music, but they would sing according to what finger was playing what note. And of course, if you have ever heard the Johnson sisters, their bass sang as low as a man. She had an extremely mellow, low voice, and that's the way they learned their music.
What fun. And then it took many years before we finally had some women writing music, or it seems that way to me. Do you remember your first woman's arrangement? Or?
Oh, what was the first book?
I think Ozzy
Wesley
did a book, and he was.
In the 1950s, you think?
I think so, yeah.
Floyd Connett was pretty active in starting things.
He had his Bells of Harmony in southern Illinois, and he was an arranger too. And of course, as we got to know him, and he eventually he had 4 choruses of Bells of Harmony in southern Illinois and Iowa. And as he became inducted into Sweet Adelines, he encouraged his 4 choruses to transfer to or to join the Sweet Adeline organization, which they did.
What about your fondest memories of conventions? Those early conventions must have been quite different than they are today. What do you remember about them that's special?
Oh, I don't know. It's you're going back 46 years.
Right.
And if it happened long ago than 2 weeks, I don't remember.
Oh, Pearl, we all had to be in one big, huge room.
Yeah.
And all these nervous people together. And you really couldn't warm up or anything,
For
because there you were with
competition.
everybody, you know. Before the competition started, everybody's supposed to be there, or else,
You
you
mean
know.
the quartets?
The quartets.
Yeah, we were sort of locked in a room.
Uh-huh.
They locked you in a room?
Yeah.
More or less.
They called you out one by one?
One by one.
And who was judging?
Men.
With men judging, Helen Sievers was a judge for the men's organization.
That's the first international president?
Yeah, Helen Sievers, first national president.
Oh, that's a good point. You were the first international president
yes.
with the Canadian chapter?
Yes.
Do you remember?
When we got back to Chicago from Tulsa, this first organizational meeting, the Johnson sisters decided that they were going to start a Chicago chapter. So they called a meeting of women they thought would be interested, and they called it for a Thursday night. And I said, well, I'll be late because that's my choir rehearsal night. So I said, I'll be there after choir rehearsal. So I did, and when I got there, I found out I had been elected president of the chapter.
There's one way to get it.
And thus began your illustrious career as an administrator, besides just a singer. Dottie, do you remember the years as president? What do you remember about those years?
Well, I was installed on the Canadian side of the Niagara Falls.
Oh.
That was kind of exciting because we were driving in this little bus, and I said, "My, that water's rough out there." It was the falls. I didn't realize that, and it was kind of fun because my father was kind of proud of his little girl, and we didn't tell him until we got there, you know, and he just couldn't believe that would happen. When they nominated me, I thought, "My, that's nice," but I didn't ever expect to walk away and be a president. But it was a kind of scary thing, though, really.
Yes.
Because we were expected to do a lot of things. I mean, we had to write to the judges, do our own correspondence and everything in those days.
And we're sort of feeling our way all the way.
And we were required to MC things, shows and everything,
yeah.
and we had to go and install people and
All over the
country. We took buses and trains and cars, and there weren't any planes to fly much this.
Well, I think I must have traveled well over 10,000 miles in my, and most of it by driving. I think the farthest is when the New York girls invited me out there to MC a regional convention, and they flew me out to New York that time.
Oh, that was a big one.
Yeah, that was a big one.
Well, I read somewhere that the dues were like 50 cents a person or something. How did you manage a budget on such little income?
Not very well.
Well, there's so many things we didn't pay for in those
Yeah.
days, you know. We didn't have costume was just a little white blouse and a black skirt. That was kind of a starter for most
And don't
everybody.
forget the red bow tie.
Oh, the red bow tie, yes. So we really didn't have anything like the things the girls have today. I mean, it was just a simple little group that got together to sing. We didn't have any, we didn't do any choreography, nothing like we have today.
When you had a champion, how did you treat them? What did they do when they were champions?
Oh, what did they do? You were a champion.
Well, we were invited to shows that we probably wouldn't have been in the area, and we weren't paid very much, barely expenses. So we didn't really make any money and then we did have the expensive costumes and that. But we were thrilled at just knowing that we were champions and that we were recognized as such. Now, when I was a champion in 1949, they had not yet started to give out crowns. The first crowns, I think, were the quarter notes when they won in Santa Monica, and they were flower crowns, which of course didn't last. Then the next year, the Pitch Pipers won in Florida, at St. Petersburg, and those crowns were shells. And then from then on, it started into, and I think for a long time, the Hostess chapter furnished the crowns. And of course, it was up to them to decide what the crown would be. And then as the organization developed, of course, they got a little, well, right now the Cornet Club furnishes the crowns, but there was no Cornet Club then. And so it was the Hostess chapter generally who was expected to furnish the crown. And of course, the choice was up to them.
And now we have a room full of sparkling crowns at every contest.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
That is one change that you can see through the years. And then, of course, the Cornet Club sort of backtracked and picked up on those queens who did not have crowns and got crowns for them, which were the Decaturettes and the Johnson sisters. And I got my crown differently, not through the Cornet Club.
I see.
But Marion Moore decided we should have crowns. So she bought them, and she said that way she could pick the kind that she wanted. And she gave me my crown, and I think it was either one birthday and 2 Christmas presents, or 1 Christmas and 2 birthday presents.
How lovely. What a nice friend. Friendship is something that's happened in Sweet Adelines without our even planning for it, isn't it?
Yes.
Do you remember formulating friendships way back then? Was it the same then as it is today?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I think so.
Yes,
we made friends that I still, you know, hear from the people that I knew way back in 49, 50.
Well, I got to know the people in Tulsa pretty well because we always had our board meetings, our mid-year board meetings in Tulsa, and they would get rooms for us at, I think it was the Trade Winds Motel. And I got to know Jane Pfeiffer very well through those meetings. And I'd even, times when I'd be visiting when I would stay with her, and she has stayed with me when she came to Chicago. And that's a friendship that has lasted through the years. Of course, I wouldn't have known Marion Moore had it not been for Sweet Adelines. And I've known Marion since, well, 1948, which is a long, long time.
It's wonderful, isn't it?
And then, of course, through the years, I would not have met Dottie if it hadn't been for Sweet Adelines.
No.
And I would not have been in almost every state in the United States and Hawaii and London if it hadn't been for Sweet Adeline. So we do develop friends and memories of places we've been where we could not have probably gone without having a reason like Sweet Adeline's
Oh, I don't think
conventions.
I would have gone to so many places either. You know, and you have been to all the conventions.
Yes.
Every single
Every single
one.
convention, isn't that wonderful?
Yes, this is my 46th.
Oh,
Really? Yeah.
Let's think about the future for just a minute. You have such a wonderful perspective to see where we are now from where we were when you began, and what do you think our future is like?
Well, if it follows the regular pattern, now that first meeting in Tulsa, I remember a lot of little old ladies competing, and now we see these beautiful young girls, and I think that we can look forward to a much younger group of ladies, because I think as they know what kind of music we sing, and as they know what kind of showmanship and all the other glitter that goes with singing Sweet Adelines, whether or not you're a queen, just being in a chorus affords a lot of glitter, a lot of excitement and experience. I know just in my own, I was none of these things. I could sing. I've sung all my life, but I had never done any administrative work. I had never done any emceeing, and I had never done any editing. I had never known anything about makeup, and all these things I call byproducts of being a Sweet Adeline.
I find the same thing. That I would have never dreamed I could stand in front of a group of people and talk. Never in my thought. Oh, but I did it.
And you see youth in our future too, Dottie?
Oh yes, indeed, I do. I do. I think it's going to be and grow and sparkle more and more all the time.
It's been just delightful to have this conversation with you this morning, and I thank you so much for sharing what you had from the past and what you see as our future.
Well, thank you for asking me.
Thank you for asking me too. I like it. It's fun.
And I'm glad you asked Dottie, because she wouldn't have been here otherwise. Carefully, because I'm older than you are. You know.
Are you
gotta,
sure of that?
Yes.
I doubt that. I don't believe it. I don't think so.
There you go. And just as though it's a normal conversation.
Oh,
And then maybe look this way for a second, then back over.
Okay.
And I'm going to do the same for you, Pearl. Okay, and then you'll be looking at Dottie as though she's talking.
And
Maybe
I'll be
not-
talking.
can you say something?
Oh, it's fun.
Yeah, that's true.
It's been wonderful years since we met. Really, truly.
A long time.
All right.
Let's see. Wait, I'm not hearing my audio for some reason.
beautiful.
Whenever y'all are ready.
Okay, great. Well, we're talking about the very beginnings of Barbershop and the contests. Talk to me a little bit about how long your group, the Johnson sisters, have been singing.
Well, it's been a long time. I think since about 1928. And we, when I was 5, I used to meet the men at the telephone company that was just down the street, and we sang Jada Jada Jing 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 every morning at 7:30. And she did the same. And we had, all our friends were barbershoppers. And so we didn't know at first that Harriet could sing so low. And so my brother took the bass part. And then one day we discovered that she had a low voice, and so he put her in his place. And from then on, we were a quartet. And that was way, way back.
And how did you choose your arrangements?
We have no music. We
never use music.
each had a finger on the piano. And this one was mine, and this one was Rudy's, and so forth, you know. So we had we could not give anybody an arrangement of any kind because we just had no music. And but now I have an arrangement. After all these years, I have an arrangement of Beautiful Garden of Roses, and I want to have copies made and give it to anybody that would want it.
It was taken off of a recording that you had done?
No,
No?
my sister Stella wrote all the notes, and my nephew put it on a computer and then onto one of these music things, and he made me an arrangement, the first one. So
We
we're
never
very
had
happy.
music. Never had music.
Yeah.
The men sang just, I don't think they had any, but we were taught verbally or by the piano,
Yeah.
Ear singing, right?
Yeah,
By
very
the
good
ear,
ears.
yeah.
But we've had harmony all our life because Mom taught us when we were smaller. We sang church songs and things like that. I sang nothing but Norwegian at that time because Mom didn't speak English, So we had to learn the hard way. But it was easy. 'Cause I think we all had an ear for music.
So you had met a lot of the men, a lot of male barbershoppers.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Just through your circle of friends.
Well, some were particular friends. We had one that I'd known for many years, and he sang in a quartet. And he's the one who started us really in quartet.
And where was this? What city? Where
Chicago.
In Chicago, yeah.
Chicago, Illinois.
Okay. And then when the Sweet Adelines organization began, tell me about how you got involved in that.
Well, we didn't know there was such a thing as the Sweet Adeline organization until Mildred Buxton. She was way back. She kept sending us mail and asking us to come to the first competition in '47. We couldn't figure out how she got her name because that's far away, Tulsa. But so happened one of the barbershoppers mentioned us to her. So she sent us an invitation, and that's how that came about.
And so you decided to enter
Yes.
Yeah,
first
we
competition?
decided to go
Yeah.
to it, But we sang for the barbershoppers long before that.
Yeah, they
I
had
guess
their
we
shows.
sang the first time about 1937.
Now, may I ask how old you all were at that time?
Well, let me see.
Well-
I was just married, and I was married at 19, but we sang before that. And Stella was 2 years older than I. Ruby's 2 years younger, and she's 10 years older than me. So,
So you were young women and decided to get involved with this contest. And tell us about that first one.
well,
Oh my! Well, you remember more than I. I've
yeah.
forgotten a few things.
I worked at Marshall Fields. I don't know if anybody here
Oh,
knows Marshall Fields.
this is for the barbershoppers.
And I wrote in the mail division, and they wrote and asked for donations. And when I saw that, they came to me, of all things. And when I saw that contest thing, I immediately went to the phone and called the girls and said, would you like to get into a barbershop competition? And they said, well, why not? So I called the number on this paper, and the man said, you sure you sing barbershop? And I said, yes, we do. And he says, you're positive? And I said, yes. He said, well, normally we don't allow women. And I said, well, it doesn't say that on this thing, on this brochure. And he said, well, meet us at the Stevens Hotel tonight and look for a man with a mustache and a cane. So I pictured a doddering old man. So happened he had a broken leg. And so he took us down into the restaurant. And there were the Maple City Four. Do you know them?
Yes.
And I don't know who all. Some of the quartets from Tulsa. And Ray said, I just can't believe that you're sisters, because we didn't look too much alike those days. And he said, and I don't believe that you sing barbershop. And I said, well, we do. And so he had us sing a little Sweet Kitty Dooley. And he said, I got just a spot for you on our program. And he put us on first. And this was a very bad thing because we didn't know what anybody else could do, Well, anyway, we had a wonderful time, and they were all so nice to us, and they accepted us after that.
Of course, we couldn't join them, you know.
No. But then all the wives were saying, why don't you start an organization so we could get in? Well, I wouldn't know the first thing about that, you know, and we just kept putting it off and putting it off. And I'm glad to belong to this, you know. So,
Well,
How about our first, talk a little bit about our first contest.
well, let's see, that was...
you'll have to remember, I
there
don't
were
recall
about
everything.
14 or 16 quartets. And I really had to give those girls credit because many of them have only been singing together for a short time. And they got up there and performed knowing that they were just helping to fill in, you
The
know.
program.
And really, they deserve more credit than the winners as far as I could see. Well, we made a lot of friends after that. And we, let's see, what did we sing? In the Evening by the Moonlight was one, and that's the song that we sang a wrong chord in, you know, and so we got marked off of that. Another thing, our tenor walked off the stage this way, and we walked off that way.
She wasn't feeling good either. You know? it was really
And,
something.
so there were a few more points gone, you know. And so then they got us together and they said, well, sing that chord over again for us. So we sang that whole line with that same chord. And they
was marked
said,
against
well,
us.
it's not an accepted chord. So we said, well, all right, you know, we didn't think anything of it. So then we lost by just 1 or 2 points, which was all right. And the Decaturettes were just so sweet and really were worthy of first place, you know. So then the following year, we decided to go in again, and that year we made it. So
You chose different music.
yes, we sang. I can't remember.
Well, our mother sang with us too, but she didn't. She couldn't stand up in front of a crowd. You know.
We sang Apple Blossom Time in Normandy, and Mandy and Me.
And did you dress alike?
Yes.
That's the night that we won.
We had suits, you know, and long skirts and blouses. We didn't have fancy clothes like these gals do nowadays.
Well, they didn't have anything.
They look like birds
that.
of paradise, don't they?
Yeah, we had to make our own, most of them, and we very seldom could get 4 things alike. So that was it.
The judges, we had male judges in those.
All male, all male.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember the categories or what? Okay.
No,
That's
nothing.
okay.
We had all the information from the very beginning, but as I say, it was destroyed. You know, became destroyed. We've saved what we could, but we felt so bad.
How has the organization evolved over the years? Talk a little bit about how you've seen it change.
Well, we stopped, let's see, we won competition in 1948, and about 1950 or 51 we stopped singing because Ruby moved to California.
But
And then we sort of were not involved in it for quite a little while.
well, I kept going to.
Oh, yes,
I went
Harriett
to the
went.
chapter all the
Yeah.
time.
What chapter was it?
Chicago
Chicago.
chapter. It was the only chapter at that time. We had a big chorus. We had about 92 people, 93 people at that time. But then the girls decided they lived on the outskirts and decided that they were going to start. So they all started from all around Chicago and then ended up with very few in Chicago downtown. Well, I don't blame them. It was a long way for them to go. It was no fun walking down the streets in Chicago at midnight.
What do you see as the biggest difference now?
Oh my,
The music.
oh my.
Those days, when you sort of got together with 3 people and you picked out your part, you know, that's woodshedding. And now it's, well, you have to be almost a professional
It sounds professional now.
in order to win, you know, and everything is so perfect. It wasn't, it might have been like that and we didn't know it, you know, but it might have been that way years and years ago. But now, when you hear Queen, well, they are just out of this world. There is just nothing that they can't sing, and their clothes are gorgeous. And I said last night to my niece who came to see the show that I'm so proud to be a part of this, even though it's a small part, you know. And she wanted to know, how did you get to be a queen? And so there was a lot for me to explain, you know. And I was really proud, so proud last night of the show, and that my family could see it. Also, my nephew came in from Washington, he and his wife, and they came to see it. And her
My son flew up from Florida, and his wife.
It really was a wonderful feeling.
Well, I would say this. I started before the other girls because I was older. But I used to sing on the corner, that's the way the barbershoppers did. They would gather and somebody would decide to sing a song and then others would harmonize. I sang with my brothers and one of the boys across the street. So I was quite a tomboy anyway. But it was so much fun.
Yeah. But then,
That's the way they sang. It wasn't no music, no nothing. Let's sing something. And they'd start off and fumble around for their notes. But it was great for the ear. Believe me, it taught a lot.
And of course, we didn't have television and...
We didn't have anything, really. Not anything. But we had to make our own music. But we had always done it, but the way Mom wanted us to, you know, she...
well, the worst part of it is, all these men who taught us barbershop, they're all gone. There aren't any of them left, you know. And people we think of from years ago and inquire about, they're gone.
Well,
And
that
that's the way it
happens, you
is,
know.
and here we are, you know. But for a long time, Ruby and Stella and I were a trio. And we only sang for ourselves. And then this one man who taught us barbershop wanted to know, would we accept a job at it was sort of a nightclub those days. And for a little while in the evening, you know. Well, we did, but we didn't last very long.
Did you ever have aspirations of going into show business?
Oh, never.
No, okay, it was always fun.
Never.
Well-
We went to, they were advertising for background music for Bing Crosby's show. And you had to be able to read music, and we couldn't. Ruby
I never
Stone,
read music.
she was the only one that could read music. And when he
Who
heard
was?
her,
Who was the only one?
You.
I don't read music.
Oh, you don't? Oh,
No,
it's
it's
Stella.
Stella. Stella's the one. She's
yeah,
the piano
I'm sorry.
player.
Yeah. And when he heard her voice, he wanted her so badly, but she had 2 boys to raise and no husband. And it would take 2 months. And he begged her and said that he would write a 5th part if she would come join their show. She said, I can't do it. He was on the telephone every solitary day. Then when he couldn't get her, he wanted Stella. And Stella said no. So you see, we didn't have this thing about being famous.
Yes, and you wanted to be, it was an amateur hobby.
That's right. We were
Is there
purely amateurs.
Anything else that you would like to say?
Well, I'd like to add something to the first night with the barbershoppers. O.C. Cash came up to me and said, Harriet, will you sing bass if I get two other people to sing? He took 2 of the Bartlesville Barflies, and we stood and sang, and I got such a bang out of it. And then he wrote to Stella when she was expecting her baby, and he said, if it's, you tell.
Well, he wrote and he said, when this future barbershopper was born, would we please name him Owen
If it was a
after
man.
him? And his future as a baritone would be assured. And she had a boy, and Dick sang with us when he was 7 years old. We used to rehearse at his house, and he learned all our parts just by
All
listening.
the parts, but he couldn't sing mine.
And he stood up on a chair on the stage, and he sang with us. And that boy really had an ear for music. And so OMC Cash was right. Dick really sang very well.
Did any of you have children that have been Sweet Adelines or Barbershops?
No,
Okay.
no, Dick was the only one, don't you think?
That's right.
Yeah,
That's
Dick was the
right.
only one.
Anything else that you'd like to?
Oh my, I don't know. I don't know what I can think of. I just remember so many good times, you
Yeah,
know.
that's
but
all.
It's hard to
We had
pick them
wonderful
apart,
times.
you know,
Yeah.
because I'm just getting a little bit old to remember. I'll be 90 my next birthday.
She's the queen mother, you know. She's
For the
going to be
day.
90 years old. And I don't know anybody in the
oldest living
organization
queen, perhaps?
older
I
than
beg
that.
your
The
pardon?
oldest living queen?
Oh, I don't know. I imagine so. I imagine so.
Well, anyway, we got our crowns in 1974 in Milwaukee. And Harriet just told me the other day that the Racine chapter.
I don't know. I know they were the one who sponsored the
Show at that time.
show at that time.
Well, we think that they gave us our crowns.
And we don't know.
We're
Don't
not
know
sure.
for sure.
Crowns in the first one.
They didn't give anything. We just,
No.
well, we got,
We got these pins,
yeah, these things.
yes, and we're very proud of that.
Oh, yes.
So,
Those are the original?
That's the original, and there were only 8 of them. There were only 8 of them.
They're getting a shot of your chest.
or my pins.
Yes.
Well, yes, they're,
Else that we haven't already covered.
Y'all sing together.
So there's nobody to take that part unless it was Dick, but he moved away and, you know,
well,
so that took care of it.
A lot of memories.
Oh,
a lot of
yes.
years of memories.
We have a lot of nice memories from way back because I don't remember anything else but music and singing. Because we had 4 brothers and we all sang.
I think that's what kept us together, music.
I'm sure.
You know.
I'm sure.
And Mom sang with us. She took Harry's part. My mother was the bass. And she sang Sweet and Low, and she had the melody. And, oh, what a hit she was, you know.
Everybody called her mom.
Yeah.
You know, everybody called her mom.
Yeah.
The Barbershoppers.
She was
It was
wonderful.
great. We have many, many happy memories.
Yeah, well, that's it.
That's
the-
about all I can say.
That's the story of our life.